to accompany that with humanitarian measures. There is an increasingly urgent need to invest in the expansion of mental health services as well, so as to tackle the devastating psychological impact of the crisis. We have people who are grieving, who are anxious, who are depressed, who are afraid of the future, and they must be helped. We also need measures to tackle the economic and social effects of the crisis. And here, let me be crystal clear. This is not a choice between responding to the health consequences of the pandemic or responding to its economic and social consequences. We can't divide things like that. If we do not control the spread of the virus, the economy will never recover. So as we're taking health measures, we also need to take direct measures to support households and businesses and help them stay afloat. We need to focus on the most vulnerable: women, children, elderly people, the low-paid, and other vulnerable groups. That's why I have urged the G20 to look with urgency at a recovery plan which will be large-scale and which will cover at least 10% of the world's GDP. Developed countries may be able to manage this themselves, but we must give a massive increase in the resources available to support developing countries. I've also urged a strengthening of the support provided through the World Bank Group, the IMF, and other international financial institutions. Thirdly,
doit aboutir à des économies plus égalitaires, plus inclusives et plus durables, et à des sociétés plus fortes et plus résilientes. Cette pandémie est une tragédie. Notre réponse à cette tragédie et notre reconstruction doivent placer les droits humains au centre. Mais nous devons aussi saisir cette occasion pour faire face à la crise climatique et pour lutter contre toutes les inégalités et notamment les lacunes ayantes de nos systèmes de protection sociale. Il s'agit d'une opportunité pour reconstruire autrement et mieux. Au lieu de revenir à des systèmes qui n'étaient plus durables, nous devons faire un bond vers un avenir qui fait place aux énergies propres par l'inclusion et l'égalité, au renforcement des filets de sécurité sociale, y compris à travers une couverture médicale universelle. Il faudra un grand effort multilatéral. J'espère que la recherche d'un vaccin pourra en être le point de départ. L'initiative ACT Accelerate est une collaboration mondiale historique visant à accélérer la recherche, la production et l'égalité d'accès aux solutions diagnostiques et thérapeutiques et aux vaccins pour le Covid-19. Il est essentiel que toute personne, où qu'elle se trouve, ait accès physiquement et financièrement à ces solutions qui constituent un bien public mondial par excellence.
Medical care, and particularly even when we get a vaccine to that, which will be a global public good. We can do that, we
I'd like
must
to
do
close
that.
by paying tribute to the frontline health workers who are the heroes of this pandemic. From nurses, doctors and midwives to technicians and administrators, millions of healthcare workers are putting themselves in harm's way every day to protect us. We owe them our deepest appreciation and solidarity. The entire United Nations family stands with the thousands of our colleagues of the World Health Organization who are working around the world to support member states in saving lives and protecting the vulnerable with guidance, training and essential testing, treatment and protective equipment. We thank you for your service. I saw the courage and determination of WHO personnel working to end the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo when I visited last year. It is partly or largely thanks to their efforts in very difficult and dangerous conditions that new infections have been contained and we are counting down to the end of the Ebola outbreak. The WHO is irreplaceable. It needs enhanced resources, particularly to provide support to developing countries, which must be our greatest concern. We are as strong as the weakest health systems. Protecting the developing world is not a matter of charity or generosity, but a question of enlightened self-interest. The global north cannot defeat COVID-19 unless the global south defeats it at the same time. As I said last month, and I quote, "Once we have finally turned the page on this epidemic, there must be a time to look back fully to understand how such a disease emerged and spread its devastation so quickly across the globe, and how all those involved reacted to the crisis. The lessons learned will be essential to effectively address similar challenges as they may arise in the future. But now is not that time. Now it's a time for unity, for the international community to work together in solidarity to stop this virus and its shattering consequences. End of quote. We cannot contemplate a future of fear and insecurity. Either we get through this pandemic together or we fail. Either we stand together or we fall apart. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. I shall now invite the President of South Africa and current Chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, to make his statement. South Africa, can you please join us? I think we are waiting for the connection with South Africa. Just a few more seconds, and we should have South Africa online now. While we are waiting for the connection with South Africa, we'll just show a short video again. seems we still have a problem of connection with South Africa, so we are re-establishing the connection with South Africa. In the meantime, I welcome to speak next His Excellency President Xi Jinping, President of the People's Republic of China. Excellency, you have the floor.
President of the World Health Assembly,
世界卫生组
Director
织
General of
总
the
干
World
事
Health
先生，
Organization,
各位代表
dear，delegates,
首先
to，begin with,
我认为
I wish to say
在
that
人
it
类
is of
抗击新
significant
冠肺炎疫
importance for
情
this
的关
World
键时
Health
刻，
Assembly to be
举行
held
这
at
次
such
世
a
卫大
critical
会
moment
具
as the
有
human
十
race
分重要的
battles
意义。
its novel coronavirus.
人类正
While
在
we are
经历
facing
第二次世界大
It's
战结
the
束以
most
来
serious global public health
最严
emergency
重的
since the end of the Second
全
World
球
War.
公共卫生突发事件。新冠肺炎疫情突如其来，现在已经波及210多个国家和地区，影响了70多亿人口，夺走了30余万人的宝贵生命。在此，我谨向不幸罹难者表示哀悼，向他们的家属表示慰问。人类文明史也是一部同疾病和灾难的斗争史。病毒没有国界，疫病不分种族。面对来势汹汹的新冠肺炎疫情，国际社会没有退缩，各国人民勇敢前行，守望相助，风雨同舟，展现了人间大爱，汇聚起同疫情斗争的磅礴之力。经过艰苦卓绝努力，付出巨大代价，中国有力扭转了疫情局势，维护了人民生命安全和身体健康。中方始终本着公开、透明、负责任的态度，及时向世卫组织及相关国家通报疫情信息，第一时间发布病毒基因序列等信息，毫无保留同各方分享防控和救治经验，尽己所能，为有需要的国家提供了大量支持和帮助。主席先生，现在疫情还在蔓延，防控仍需努力。我愿提出以下建议：第一，全力搞好疫情防控，这是当务之急。我们要坚持以民为本、生命至上，科学调配医疗力量和重要物资，在防护、隔离、检测、救治、追踪等重要领域采取有力举措，尽快遏制疫情在全球蔓延态势，尽力阻止疫情跨境传播。要加强信息分享，交流有益经验和做法，开展检测方法、临床救治、疫苗药物研发国际合作，并继续支持各国科学家们开展病毒源头和传播途径的全球科学研究。第二，发挥世卫组织领导作用。在谭德赛总干事带领下，世卫组织为领导和推进国际抗疫合作做出了重大贡献，国际社会对此高度赞赏。当前，国际抗疫正处于关键阶段，支持世卫组织就是支持国际抗疫合作，支持挽救生命。中国呼吁国际社会 加大对世卫组织政治支持和资金投入，调动全球资源打赢疫情阻击战。第三，加大对非洲国家支持。发展中国家，特别是非洲国家，公共卫生体系薄弱，帮助他们筑牢防线，是国际抗疫斗争重中之重。我们应该向非洲国家提供更多物资、技术、人力支持。中国已向50多个非洲国家和非盟交付了大量医疗援助物资，专门派出了5个医疗专家组。在过去70年中，中国派往非洲的医疗队为2亿多人次非洲人民提供了医疗服务。目前，常驻非洲的46支中国医疗队正在投入当地的抗疫行动。第四，加强全球公共卫生治理。人类终将战胜疫情，但重大公共卫生突发事件对人类来说不会是最后一次。要针对这次疫情暴露出来的短板和不足，完善公共卫生安全治理体系，提高突发公共卫生事件应急响应速度，建立全球和地区防疫物资储备中心。中国支持在全球疫情得到控制之后，全面评估全球应对疫情工作，总结经验，弥补不足。这项工作需要科学专业的态度，需要世卫组织主导，坚持客观公正原则。第五，恢复经济社会发展。有条件的国家要在做好常态化疫情防控的前提下，遵照世卫组织专业建议，有序开展复工复产复学。要加强国际宏观经济政策协调，维护全球产业链、供应链稳定畅通，尽力恢复世界经济。第六，加强国际合作。人类是命运共同体，团结合作是战胜疫情最有力的武器。这是国际社会抗击艾滋病、埃博拉、禽流感、甲型 H1N1 流感等重大疫情取得的重要经验，是各国人民合作抗疫的人间正道。主席先生，中国始终秉持构建人类命运共同体理念，既对本国人民生命安全和身体健康负责，也对全球公共卫生事业尽责。为推进全球抗疫合作，我宣布，中国将在2年内提供20亿美元国际援助，用于支持受疫情影响的国家，特别是发展中国家抗疫斗争以及经济社会恢复发展。中国将同联合国合作，在华设立全球人道主义应急仓库和枢纽，努力确保抗疫物资供应链，并建立运输和清关绿色通道。中国将建立30个中非对口医院合作机制，加快建设非洲疾控中心总部，助力 非洲提升疾病防控能力。中国新冠疫苗研发完成并投入使用后，将作为全球公共产品，为实现疫苗在发展中国家的可及性和可担负性做出中国贡献。中国将同20国集团成员一道，落实暂缓最贫困国家债务偿付倡议，并愿同国际社会一道，加大对疫情特别重、压力特别大的国家的支持力度，帮助其克服当前的困难。我呼吁，让我们携起手来，共同佑护各国人民生命和健康，共同佑护人类共同的地球家园，共同构建人类卫生健康共同体。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Excellency. J'ai le plaisir à présent de donner la parole au président de la France, Son Excellence le président Emmanuel Macron. Vous avez la parole.
Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée mondiale de la santé, Monsieur le Secrétaire général des Nations unies, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, Monsieur le Directeur général de l'OMS, je veux vous remercier de m'avoir invité à ouvrir avec vous cette 73e Assemblée mondiale de la santé. Cette session est sans nul doute l'une des plus importantes de l'histoire de l'Organisation mondiale de la santé. Elle doit être un moment d'unité, de solidarité, mais aussi de lucidité et d'action face à la crise mondiale inédite que nous traversons tous. Souvenons-nous de ce qui a présidé à la fondation de l'OMS en 1948, bâtir un monde nouveau où chacun pourrait jouir d'une meilleure santé, parce que c'est le droit fondamental de tout être humain. Souvenons-nous des progrès aussi accomplis depuis, de tout ce que nous avons su faire ensemble avec l'OMS, avec tous les acteurs de la santé mondiale, au service de cet objectif. L'augmentation de l'espérance de vie, le recul de la mortalité infantile, l'éradication de maladies meurtrières comme la variole, le combat qui reste entier quant à lui contre la tuberculose, le paludisme ou le VIH, pour l'élargissement de l'accès aux médicaments, à la vaccination, pour le renforcement des systèmes de santé. La pandémie de Covid-19 a bouleversé nos vies, nos sociétés, a mis nos économies à l'arrêt, a aussi révélé nos vulnérabilités à tous. Elle nous a rappelé aussi, s'il le fallait, toute la valeur de la santé humaine et de ceux qui en prennent soin. Je tiens, en cette année consacrée par l'OMS aux sages-femmes et aux infirmiers, à saluer tous ceux qui, chaque jour, sont sur le terrain pour prendre soin des autres, parfois au péril de leur vie, comme l'épouvantable attaque contre une maternité en Afghanistan l'a encore montré tragiquement il y a quelques jours. Alors, au moment où les soignants se battent contre la pandémie, au moment où les populations de tous nos pays font face avec courage, nous n'avons pas le droit de nous diviser. Nous n'avons pas le droit de nous dérober. Nous avons collectivement un devoir d'efficacité. La priorité absolue, la seule qui vaille, c'est de venir à bout de cette pandémie. Chacun de nous porte en lui une partie de la solution. États, organisations internationales, fonds spécialisés, organisations de la société civile, industries pharmaceutiques, banques de développement, citoyens. Ce n'est qu'en unissant nos forces que nous viendrons à bout de cette pandémie. Nous avons besoin de l'OMS pour son rôle irremplaçable de coordination, pour son expertise scientifique, sa connaissance du terrain. Nous avons besoin d'une OMS forte face au Covid-19. Et l'OMS, c'est nous. Ce sont ses États membres. Il dépend donc de nous de lui permettre de jouer tout son rôle dans la réponse
Therefore, if the
internationale aux
organization
pandémies.
is to play its role in
C'est la raison pour
full in
laquelle la France a
coordinating
décidé il y a
international
quelques
response to
jours
pandemics,
de renforcer
this and others,
substantiellement
it needs
le
all
soutien
of us.
financier
That's
apporté
precisely
à
why
notre organisation.
recently France has decided to
C'est la raison pour
substantially
laquelle,
increase
aux
our
côtés de
financial
l'OMS,
contribution to this
avec nos
organization.
partenaires européens, avec
With
l'ensemble des
the
acteurs de la
WHO, with
santé
our
mondiale,
European partners and with
nous avons
everybody
lancé
involved in
l'initiative
global health, we
ACT-A
have launched an
pour
initiative
soutenir
called ACT-A.
massivement la recherche,
The purpose of
accélérer
that is to
le
offer
développement
massive
et
support to
permettre un
research,
accès
to speed up
universel
the
aux moyens de lutte contre la pandémie.
results
Parce que
of
oui,
medical
un
research
vaccin,
and
s'il
to
est
ensure that
découvert
we can
face au
guarantee
Covid-19,
universal
sera un
access
bien
to the
public
tools we
mondial
need to fight the
auquel
pandemic.
chacun
If we
devra
do
pouvoir avoir
discover
accès.
a vaccine against
C'est une
COVID-19,
question
it will be a global
d'efficacité.
public good and
Tant
everyone
que la
must have access
maladie
to it.
sera la
This is a
réalité de
question of
quelques-uns,
effectiveness, really.
elle sera
As
une
long as
menace
the
pour
disease
tous.
remains a threat
C'est
to
une
a
question de
few, it
principe.
will remain a threat for
La santé
everybody.
humaine ne se
It's also,
discute
however,
pas,
a
ne se
question of
réserve
principle.
pas,
Human
ne se
health
monnaie.
cannot be quarreled over, cannot be
L'Europe s'engage
appropriated
pleinement
and cannot
dans la
be
construction de la
bought and
réponse
sold.
internationale à la pandémie.
Therefore,
Le
Europe
4 mai dernier,
makes
la conférence
an
de financement
unrestricted
organisée par la
commitment to
Commission européenne
and
a permis de
improving the international
mobiliser
response to the pandemic.
7,5 milliards d'euros au service des
A
objectifs
financing
d'ACT.
conference was organized by the
Avec
European
ses partenaires
Commission
internationaux,
and made it
l'Europe
possible to mobilize
porte
7.5
dans cette
billion
session
euros
une
to
réponse
achieve the
solide
goals
pour
of
renforcer
ACT-A.
l'application du
Other
règlement
international
sanitaire
partners in
international,
Europe
améliorer les systèmes
intends
d'alerte
to
et de
make a
réaction
solid
aux
response
urgences,
to strengthen
renforcer
the
la
implementation
recherche,
of the international
mieux
health
comprendre
regulations
en
to
toute transparence
improve
et
warning
avec un
systems
esprit de
and
coopération
emergency response and to
la crise à
strengthen
laquelle nous
research
sommes
so
confrontés
that we
et en
can
tirer
together
tous les
and in a
enseignements
spirit
et
of
donc
cooperation and
mieux y
transparency
répondre.
better understand the crisis we are facing
Nous devons
and
regarder
learn
en
the
face
lessons as to how we can best
avec
respond
lucidité,
to it.
avec exigence,
We need to look
ce
the
qui a
situation
fonctionné et ce qui n'a pas fonctionné dans la
clearly
gestion
and
internationale de la
head-on
crise.
and carry out an honest
Nous
and
avons
vigorous
l'occasion d'apporter
assessment
une
of what's
réponse
worked and what
unie
hasn't worked in the way
à la pandémie,
this international crisis has been
sans
managed.
complaisance,
Here we have an opportunity to
accusation non
provide
fondée.
a single united response
Unie,
to the pandemic, free of
exigeante,
complacency and
lucide.
unfounded
C'est notre
accusations. We need to be united,
j'appelle
demanding
l'ensemble
and
des
clear-headed.
membres de
That
cette
is
Assemblée
our duty.
à la
I therefore urge
responsabilité.
all the members of this
et à
assembly
l'action.
to show both
Au nom de
responsibility
ce qui a présidé à la
and-
fondation de notre organisation et au nom d'un droit fondamental de
And I
l'humanité.
do this in the name of what led to the
L'espérance.
creation of this organization and in the name of a fundamental right of all mankind, the right to hope. Thank you.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le
Thank
Président.
you very much, President.
It's my pleasure to now invite the President of the Republic of Korea, His Excellency President Moon Jae-in. You have the floor, Excellency.
존경하는 의장님, 사무총장님, 각국 대표단 여러분, 코로나를 극복하고 새로운 희망을
Delegates from
만들기
various
위한
nations,
세계 보건
I find it greatly meaningful
함께하게 되어
to speak before the World Health Assembly, a gathering
먼저
convened to
전
overcome
세계에서
COVID-19
코로나로
and usher in
지정되신
new
많은
hope.
분들께
First of
진심으로
all, I would like to
기도와
offer my deepest
위로의
condolences
마음을
and words of comfort to the victims
또한
of
인류의
COVID-19 all
건강과
over the
안전을
world.
위해 헌신하고 있는
Moreover,
모든
my
나라의
utmost respect and
의료진과
gratitude go
방역진에게
to the medical and
깊은
quarantine
존경과
professionals in
감사의
each
말씀을
country,
드립니다.
putting themselves at risk to protect the health
나는
and safety
오늘
of humanity.
코로나를 이기기 위해 대한민국 국민이 선택한
Today, I would
모두를
like to
위한
introduce to you the
자유의
choice
길을
made by the
소개하고자
Korean
합니다.
people to overcome COVID-19,
한국은
the
코로나의
choice
피해를
of a
가장
freedom
먼저 입은
for all.
나라 중 하나였고
The Republic of Korea was one of the
공격적인
first
바이러스에
countries hit
대응하는
by
해결책을
COVID-19, and we
빠르게
had to swiftly
찾아내야만
identify a
했습니다.
solution against the aggressive
도전과 위기의
virus.
순간 한국 국민들은
In that
담대한
moment of
선택을
crisis and
했습니다.
challenge, the Korean
개개인이
people
가지고
made a
있는
bold
자유를
decision.
모두를 위한 자유로
We took our own individual
확장시켰습니다.
freedoms and turned it to an
이웃을
even greater
바이러스를
freedom.
전파하는
freedom for
위험한
all.
대상으로 여기고
Rather than regarding our
봉쇄하고
neighbors as
차단하는 대신
dangerous spreaders of the virus
나의 안전을
or
위해
enforcing
이웃의
nationwide
안전을
lockdown
먼저
measures,
지켰습니다.
we chose to protect their
자유롭게
safety
이동하고
for the
경제
sake of our
활동을
own safety.
지속하기 위해
In order to
자발적으로
uphold
마스크를
free movement
착용하고
and keep the
사회적
economy
거리두기에
going, the
적극
Korean people
참여했습니다.
chose to wear masks and
사회적
participate
거리두기
actively
속에서도
in social
서로의
distancing.
마음은 더욱
Even in the face
가까워졌습니다.
of this social distancing, however,
의료인들은
we grew
자원봉사로
closer and
혼신의
our
노력을
hearts
다했고
fonder. Healthcare
시민들은
workers gave their
나눔으로
all through volunteer
격려했습니다.
service, while citizens
전국 단위의
encouraged them through various
총선거에서는
acts of sharing.
엄격한 방역 절차에도
In the recent
불구하고
nationwide general
2,900만 명이
elections, despite the
넘는
rigorous
유권자가
quarantine procedures in place,
참여했습니다.
over 29 million Korean voters
평상시보다
went to the
더욱
ballots.
높은 투표율을 기록하면서도
As a
한
result,
명의
we had a
감염자
true
없이
celebration of
민주주의의
democracy,
축제를
all without a single new
만들어냈습니다.
infection, with an even higher
이웃의
voter
범위는
turnout than
국경
usual.
너머로까지 확장되었습니다.
This idea of protecting our
국경을 막지
neighbors
않고
developed further
교류를
to include our
계속하는
neighbors
한편
beyond
형편이
our
허용하는
borders.
대로
We kept our borders
진단
open
키트와
and
마스크를
maintained
비롯한
our ties of exchange,
방역물품을
while also
나누었습니다.
providing diagnostic kits, face
높은
masks,
시민의식으로
and other
모두를
supplies as
위한
much as we could.
자유의 정신을
The Korean
실천하며
people displayed the
방역의
highest
주체가
form
되어준
of civic
국민들
virtues
덕분에
to practice the spirit of freedom for all and
투명성,
voluntarily
민주성의
participated in
3대
quarantine
원칙이
efforts.
힘을
This was what
발휘할
really
수
enabled the
있었습니다.
three main principles of
정부도
openness,
신속하고
transparency,
광범위한
and
진단검사와
democracy to flourish.
창의적인 방식으로
The
국민의
government also
노력을
supported the people's
뒷받침했습니다.
efforts with swift, widespread
한국이
testing and
코로나에
creative
아직
approaches.
완전히 승리한 것은
The Republic of
아닙니다.
Korea, however, has not yet
사회적
achieved
거리두기를
complete
생활
victory
속
over this
거리두기로
virus.
전환하여
We
일상과
have transitioned
방역이
from social distancing
공존하도록
to routine
노력하고
distancing
있지만
and are working to balance our
아직도
daily lives with
산발적인
ongoing
집단
quarantine
감염이
efforts,
이어지고 있습니다.
and yet we are still seeing
또한
instances of
국외에서
sporadic
계속되고
cluster
있는
infections.
세계적인 대유행이
Moreover,
여전히
the ongoing
위협적입니다.
global pandemic still
치료제와
poses
백신이
grave
준비되지
threats.
않는다면
If we do not
또다시
come up with a
새로운
viable treatment
대유행이
option
올 수도
or a
있습니다.
vaccine, a new
그러나
wave of
우리는
infections could
분명히
break out once
알고
again.
있습니다.
However,
정보를
one thing
공유하고
is
함께
absolutely
협력하는
clear.
힘은
Sharing information
바이러스가
and
갖지
cooperating
못한
with one another
인류만의
demonstrate a power that no virus will ever
코로나는
have,
인류
a
공동의
power
가치인
that only
자유의
humans possess.
정신까지 위협하지만
COVID-19 is threatening our
자유의
freedoms, a
정신에 기반한
universal virtue of all
연대와
humankind,
협력이야말로
but it is solidarity
코로나와의
and
전쟁에서
cooperation
승리할 수
based
있는
on such
가장
freedoms that will prove to be the
무기입니다.
strongest weapon we have to triumph over
의장님,
COVID-19.
각국 대표단 여러분,
Honorable
나는
Chair,
모두를 위한
distinguished
자유의
delegates,
정신에 입각하여
based
세계가
on the
지금의
spirit of
위기를
a
극복하고
greater freedom for
그
all,
이후를 대비하기
I would
위한
like to make
세
three
가지
proposals
제안을
for
하고자
overcoming the current crisis
첫째,
and preparing for its
보건
aftermath.
취약 국가에 대한 인도적 지원을
First,
확대하고
We must
방역 경험을
expand our
공유해
humanitarian
나가야 합니다.
assistance for
모두가
countries with vulnerable
코로나에서
healthcare
자유로워질
systems and
때까지
share our quarantine
한 사람도
experiences.
소외되지
Until the
않도록
day
함께
everyone
협력해야
is
합니다.
free from COVID-19, we
한국은
must
올해
work together
총
and leave
1억
no
불
one behind.
규모의 인도적 지원을
This year, the
계획하고
Republic
있습니다.
of Korea is planning to provide
위기
humanitarian
대응과
assistance
출구
worth
정책에 이르기까지
100 million
그동안
US
축적해온
dollars.
경험과
Our
데이터도
response to the crisis,
지속적으로
our immigration
국제사회와
policies,
공유해
and
나갈
other
것입니다.
such experiences and data we have
인류의
accumulated
건강을
during this
함께
outbreak
지키기 위해
will be continuously shared
WHO와
with the international
적극
community.
협력해 나갈
To
것입니다.
safeguard the health of all humanity, we will
둘째,
continue to work
백신과
closely
치료제
with the
개발을 위해
WHO.
국경을 넘어
Second, in
협력해야
order to
합니다.
develop vaccines and
개발된
treatments, we
백신과
must
치료제는
cooperate beyond
인류를
our
위한
borders.
공공재로서
Furthermore,
전
such
세계에
vaccines and treatments are
공평하게
public goods
보급되어야 할
that
것입니다.
must be distributed equitably to the whole
한국은
world.
백신과 치료제 개발을 위한
The
WHO의
Republic of
노력을
Korea fully
전적으로
supports the
지지합니다.
efforts of the WHO to develop
한국은
vaccines
세계 백신
and
면역 연합,
treatments.
글로벌 펀드,
The Republic of Korea is also working with
국제의약품
Gavi, the
국제
Global
백신
Fund,
연구소의
UNITAID,
공유국으로
and the
참여하고
International
있으며
Vaccine
올해부터
Institute as a donor
감염병
country.
혁신
And
연합에도
this year,
기여할
we will begin
예정입니다.
contributing to CEPI, the
셋째,
Coalition for
WHO
Epidemic
국제
Preparedness
보건 규칙을
Innovations.
비롯한
Third,
관련
we
규범을
must update
빠르게
the
준비하고
WHO international
지속력을
health regulations and
갖춰야
other relevant norms and
우리는
augment
언제라도
them
올 수 있는
with binding
신종
legal
감염병
force.
위기에 보다
A novel
신속하고
infectious disease
효과적으로
could emerge at any
대응할 수 있어야
time,
합니다.
and we must be able to
감염병
respond
관련
more
정보를
quickly and
국가 간에 더욱
effectively.
투명하게 공개하고
Infection-related
조기 경보
data should be
시스템과
shared among
협력
countries in
체계를
a more
공동으로
transparent manner,
구축하는
and an early
노력이
warning
필요합니다.
system and a cooperation mechanism must be
G20
jointly
정상회의와
established.
아세안 플러스 3
At the G20 and
정상회의에서
ASEAN Plus 3
논의된
summits,
협력 방안들이
various measures for cooperation were
구체화될 수
proposed,
있기를
and I
바랍니다.
hope they will be made more concrete.
존경하는 의장님, 사무총장님, 각국 대표단
Honorable
여러분,
Chair, Director
위기
General,
앞에서 인류는
delegates
각자 도생이
from
아니라
various nations.
연대와
In the face of
협력을
crisis,
선택해야 합니다.
humankind must choose solidarity and
위기일수록
cooperation over the
상호
pursuit
신뢰와
of individual
포용으로
interests.
단합해야
The world
합니다.
must unite under the banner of mutual trust
국제사회가
and
모두를
inclusiveness in
위한
the face of
자유의
deepening
가치를
crisis.
더욱
If the
굳게
international
공유한다면
community firmly commits to the
우리는
greater
지금의
cause
위기
of freedom
극복을
for all,
앞당기고
we will undoubtedly
포스트 코로나
overcome
시대의
the current
희망을
crisis quickly
더
and
크게
bolster
키울
our
수 있을
hope
것이라고
for the
믿습니다.
post-COVID-19 era.
Thank you very much, Excellency. We are now trying to reconnect with South Africa to listen to President Ramaphosa's speech. If you are online, can you please click on the video? I think we still have connection problems, so I will ask our next guest. Our next guest speaker is no stranger to the Health Assembly. Please join me to welcome the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, Angela Merkel. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Sehr geehrter Herr Generaldirektor Tedros, Exzellenzen, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, wir erleben eine globale Krise. Fast 5 Millionen Menschen weltweit, die sich Stand heute mit dem Coronavirus infiziert haben und ebenfalls Stand heute rund 300.000 Todesfälle weltweit, außerdem geschlossene Grenzen und herbe Einschnitte im Wirtschafts- und Alltagsleben zeigen, dass kaum ein Land von der Pandemie und ihren Folgen verschont bleibt. Diese Krise kann kein Land allein lösen. Wir müssen gemeinsam handeln. Daher danke ich Ihnen allen, die Sie an der Weltgesundheitsversammlung teilnehmen, um gemeinsam nach Lösungen zu suchen. Dabei kann uns helfen, dass die Ebola-Epidemie in Westafrika im Jahre 2014 zu notwendigen Reformen der Weltgesundheitsorganisation geführt hat. Auch die G7 und die G20-Staaten haben das Thema Gesundheit zu einer Priorität gemacht. Und auf der UN-Generalversammlung im letzten Jahr haben wir den globalen Aktionsplan für ein gesundes Leben und das Wohlergehen aller Menschen verabschiedet. Gleichwohl zeigt die Coronavirus-Pandemie noch einmal besonders nachdrücklich, dass wir weltweit noch mehr tun müssen. Für bessere Frühwarnmechanismen und Präventionsmaßnahmen, für mehr Forschungskooperation, für stärkere Gesundheitssysteme. Die Weltgesundheitsorganisation ist die legitimierte globale Institution, bei der die Fäden zusammenlaufen. Weil das so ist, müssen wir immer wieder prüfen, wie wir die Abläufe in der WHO weiter verbessern können. Dazu gehört auch, für ein nachhaltiges Finanzierungssystem zu sorgen. Am dringendsten aber ist jetzt natürlich die Coronavirus-Pandemie einzudämmen. Hierfür bedarf es weltweit geeigneter Diagnostika und Therapeutika. Außerdem gilt es, einen Impfstoff zu entwickeln, der natürlich für alle zugänglich und bezahlbar sein muss. Nicht zuletzt müssen wir die vielfältigen wirtschaftlichen und sozialen Folgen der Pandemie gemeinsam abfedern. Wie wir mit der Herausforderung umgehen, wird unsere nationalen Gesellschaften wie auch die internationale Gemeinschaft prägen. Ich bin überzeugt, dass wir die Coronavirus-Pandemie überwinden werden. Je mehr wir global gemeinsam daran arbeiten, umso schneller und besser wird uns das gelingen. Ich ermuntere alle, sich daran zu beteiligen, und ich danke allen, die zum globalen Gemeinwohl beitragen.
More rapidly. So I'd like to thank all those who contribute to global well-being. Thank you.
I have the pleasure to welcome the Prime Minister of Barbados, Her Excellency Mayor Amo Motley. You have the floor, Excellency.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and distinguished delegates. Today I join with the defenders of democracy across the Caribbean Community region, the wider Americas, and indeed the small island developing states of the world, who recognize the importance of fearless, robust leadership. I speak to you from this region of the Caribbean, CARICOM as we're known, a region that is characterized by developing health systems that suffer from the same vulnerabilities as many of our countries. Low numbers of ICU beds per capita, few intensivist doctors and critical care nurses, few ventilators per capita. And regrettably, our people have a higher rate of NCDs and obesity than we would like. We have watched how COVID has decimated rich and powerful nations with strong curative care systems, killing their people, overrunning their healthcare systems, and halting business. And so early on, CARICOM decided that we cannot fight the illness and that we had to delay the arrival of COVID-19 into the region as far as possible. We mobilized all of our regional agencies, those that dealt with public health, like the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARFA, or the modeling, like the University of the West Indies, or with our disaster preparedness and mitigation, like SEDIMA, or with the tracking and the movement of persons through our borders, like the Joint Regional Communications Center of CARICOM. The Caribbean region's economies ranks among the most travel and tourism dependent economies in the world. And this has exposed our people and our economies in a way that we have not experienced since becoming independent nations more than 50 years ago in some instances. In our own case in Barbados, our Emergency Operations Center in the Ministry of Health has been functioning since mid-January. We organized our health systems to improve access to the health service for COVID-19 patients, while at the same time reducing the risk of exposure for the most vulnerable populations through reduced movement from as early as February of this year. We repurposed an abandoned naval base into a facility for COVID patients. This expanded our access to critical care beds by over 300%. Fortunately, our investment in and our preparedness of our public health officials over the decades has permitted us to do the type of public health surveillance to detect cases, trace and quarantine contacts, isolate and treat the ill. You will forgive me if I use this opportunity to salute the public health pioneers of the Caribbean over the last 7 decades. They have been true heroes to our people. Our CARICOM heads of government adopted a whole of government and a whole of society approach. In addition, we reached to our Caribbean neighbor Cuba and received hundreds of doctors and nurses to help us. I take this opportunity to thank our brothers and sisters in Cuba and the government of the Republic of Cuba in particular for its unswerving assistance during this pandemic. It has been palpable and clear to all of our population. So, our CARICOM family banded together to lock down and ride out this first wave. And it has been a long and treacherous wave. The closing of our borders and the trebling of unemployment and the reduction of our government revenues by half have created grave challenges for many of us. Similarly, the psyche of people in our hemisphere has been disturbed. For the majority of persons under the age of 70 in the Caribbean, many of whom have never had to confront grave challenges, the world appears to be on autopilot. They wonder who is in control and where is the leadership? Where is the global cooperation that they so expected? And for too many of our citizens globally, life has become a game of roulette, betting on numbers and colors and ignoring the science that needs to underpin our actions. Nations rich and poor are seeking inspiration. This is a crisis, therefore, that strikes not only at the heart of our humanity, but also at the organization of our human societies. It is a crisis that calls for global leadership that will allow us to rebuild our humanity, our environment, and the equity so badly needed in our societies and our economies. COVID has brought many of us closer than we have ever been with each other. It has equally cast a brighter light on the inequities in our society, but then it has also allowed the earth to breathe yet again. It is why we have contended that nothing short of coordinated global leadership, not just of governments, but also from people of influence, whether from the religious or faith-based organizations or in other areas of the society, that they ought to be involved. We need a global leadership initiative that is rooted in moral leadership, more so than ever. Moral leadership that recognizes that 75 years after the United Nations was formed, it is not good enough for us to accept that people or countries can fall through the cracks. That in particular, as we reflect on the events of the last 3 months, were it not for the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, or CARPHA, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, and more recently the WHO, we would believe that we were living in the wild, wild west that we see in movies, where only those who are strong and well endowed should survive. It is the intervening hand of these agencies that I just mentioned that has sought to move us as a region closer to a level playing field. But my friends, there is still much work to be done. Moral leadership that will finally recognize that the use of historic per capita income to determine access to concessional funds or grant funds, or indeed, as I mentioned earlier, to determine fair access to the procurement of goods is unacceptable. As I have said many times, it is the equivalent of taking my blood pressure reading from 2 years ago and using it today to determine my vulnerability to a stroke. A completely useless exercise. Even when our circumstances deteriorate, there has been no review that takes into account the inherent vulnerability to which we are exposed and which prevents us from being able to access critical money or goods. In addition, the use of certain proxy criteria to access technologies, medicines, vaccines, or concessional funds would exclude vulnerable countries such as ours in the Caribbean, some in Latin America, and even in the Pacific. Why? Because we are using criteria that are more relevant to fighting problems that have little or no relevance to our current vulnerabilities and challenges. For example, we are less than 2 weeks away from the beginning of the hurricane season. Tropical Storm Arthur has already formed off of the Bahamas, well in advance of that start. Many of us are already confronting droughts and the presence of sargassum weed as a result of the climate crisis, and it is wreaking havoc in our societies. But none of these challenges are captured by per capita income or by maternal mortality rates. None of them. In addition, where there is global market failure, as is happening now, small middle-income states are at risk of not being seen or heard, or not even accessing critical goods and supplies. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Tedros for reaching out to the Executive Director of the Global Fund last evening to advocate for the countries in the region that have been excluded from procurement through the consortium of critical COVID-19 medical supplies. We need to be included. It is also therefore clear that we need therefore additional criteria to determine equitable access and fair allocation, criteria that better take into account that vulnerability which we have. And if we're asking for the same solution for climate, for external shocks, as we are asking for the pandemic, it is because all three destroy our capacity to produce as nations and the ability of our people to survive. It is against this background, my friends, that equitable access and fair allocation of resources will allow our small states, particularly middle-income ones, dependent on travel, to be able to have access to increased supplies for testing, such that we can reopen our societies safely to intra-regional travel and thereafter to extra-regional travel. But it will also better allow us to ensure that there is a return to safe work by safe people, the least vulnerable people to COVID-19 in our countries. While we can tolerate high unemployment and severe contraction of our economies for 2 to 3 months, the consequences to our societies of prolonged shutdown are as equal as the high incidence of COVID among our population. That is why we need urgently to get access to adequate numbers of the appropriate tests, in particular the rapid tests that are affordable and reliable if we are to allow our economies and societies to reopen safely. Our small states have been suffering from high debt and low growth for decades, and we believe that there should also be more mature and relevant conversations for middle-income, small island developing states across the globe, especially as it relates to our debt obligations in the midst of this pandemic. Many countries will either have an orderly restructuring of debt, or at the very least, a debt moratorium that provides certainty for both the borrower and the lender. Or they will have a disorderly unraveling that will create a crisis both within the respective countries and within the global financial markets. These conversations must admit of greater certainty in the management of our affairs, and I pray that the global community will have the courage to allow us to have them. I say so, conscious that Barbados took a major leap of faith when we restructured our debt in the last 18 months to include natural disaster clauses in our domestic and external debt instruments that provide for greater fiscal space to be created through a moratorium on the payment of principal and a capitalization of the interests should we face a natural disaster event. The certainty that these natural disaster clauses provide is increased fiscal space. Were this provision available in the context of this pandemic, it would bring tremendous relief to those countries and better position many of us to rebuild in a post-COVID-19 environment. Let me at this juncture express my appreciation to Director General Dr. Tedros and the WHO for the recent appointments of Sir Andrew Whitty and Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, a dear friend of the Caribbean, as special envoys for the North and South respectively for the WHO's Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator. It is intended that they will ensure that there's a framework for equitable access to tests, therapeutics, and a vaccine, if ever there is one. In addition, our Caribbean countries salute your inclusive leadership and recognize that without your timely interventions, the efforts of PAHO and CARFA would be stymied as we try to meet the needs of our populations. 42 years on, our community still believes that the principles of Alma Ata must mean something, that we should have equitable access to the supplies we need, that we should be able to afford to save the lives of our citizens, and that the solutions should be appropriate to our context. I must add at this point that global moral leadership also means that in aid of supporting human lives, which none of us can replace, that there ought to be a suspension of international sanctions imposed against countries. Whatever differences or difficulties we may have with each other, they can be put on pause while we wrestle to the ground this awful pandemic. For wherever it exists, it affects each and every one of us. My friends, there was life before COVID-19, and I know that there will be life after COVID-19. For this reason, even with the pandemic, we must not drop the ball on those other global health priorities that are critical to our overall development. I refer specifically to the chronic NCDs, the silent killers of diabetes and cardiovascular disease, hypertension. I refer to HIV and AIDS, and to the antimicrobial resistance that we are fighting, and the other health-related diseases that come as a result of the climate crisis. For our populations, these challenges remain real and continue to be a silent but real and present danger. Let us use the cooperation we are trying to build to also help fight these challenges. Why? Because solidarity, unity, and partnership remain enduring principles for us. These are the principles that led our Caribbean countries to embrace the pursuit of democracy in the late 1930s, just as they also were the principles that helped the world rebuild after 3 decades of challenges 75 years ago with the formation of the United Nations and the Bretton Woods institutions. I pray that we will have the fortitude to fight against these challenges of our times, relying on these same principles of solidarity, unity, and partnership. I wish the leadership and management of the World Health Organization success in its efforts to promote health, to keep the world safe, and to serve the vulnerable people of our world as it is required to do. Your mission 73 years on, after your formation, remains critical. I say to you, as I leave, the world watches on with bated breath. We wish you all of the very best as you deliberate over these 2 days, for so much depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. We come back now to South Africa, and I invite the President of South Africa, current Chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, to make a statement.
Thank you. I would like to welcome this opportunity to address the World Health Assembly. We are in the midst of the most serious public health emergency our world has experienced in over 100 years. containing the coronavirus pandemic has dwarfed all other issues facing the international community and individual countries. The pandemic has profound social, political, economic, and security implications for all of us. It is impacting on human health, the economies of all affected countries, and the livelihoods of millions of people. Although the virus has affected both developed and developing countries, it is the poor who suffer the most. The pandemic has highlighted the dangerous and growing inequality that exists between countries and within them. The healthcare systems of many countries are struggling to cope. Some have been weakened by underfunding and neglect. Others are under pressure because they were designed to serve the select few. The pandemic has devastated the livelihoods of millions of people in many countries. The global recovery depends on our ability to accept the reality that this virus will be with us for some time and that we need to prepare to adapt accordingly. The social distancing, hygiene, and other protocols recommended by the World Health Organization must become part of our everyday lives. Africa affirms its full support for the World Health Organization, which has been key in guiding the international response to the pandemic. The World Health Organization has been instrumental in providing guidance and support to African governments. Africa is extremely vulnerable to the ravages of this virus and needs every possible support and assistance. The African Union has taken very deliberate steps to respond to the scourge. The African Union has made a call for developing countries to be assisted in their efforts to combat the pandemic and to rebuild their economies. This assistance needs to include debt relief. It also needs to include assistance with regard to diagnostic and therapeutic medical supplies. To turn back the frontiers of the pandemic, we must also deepen international collaboration as well as solidarity around issues like research and development and investment. We fully support the initiative by the World Health Organization, together with many other governments, in assisting the developing countries. For its part, South Africa is participating in several research initiatives. We must ensure that there is equitable access to medical equipment, technologies in all respects. In this final decade towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, we must press ahead with our goal of making universal healthcare a reality for all the people of the world, and no one must be left behind. The virus has demonstrated the essential value of universal health coverage, and this is where we need full solidarity. Let us continue to be bold and courageous in confronting this pandemic. Let us continue to collaborate and act in solidarity in the interest of the millions of people around the world. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. It is my honor to now give the floor to the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador Bokoz. President Sommaruga, President Ramaphosa, President Xi, President Macron, President Moon, Chancellor Merkel, Prime Minister Motley, Mr. Secretary General, President of the World Health Assembly, Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. I would like to start by thanking all of our distinguished guests for their support today. Thank you for taking the time to address this important assembly. Thank you for your efforts to respond to COVID-19 at home and abroad. And thank you for your strong support for WHO at this critical time. My sisters and brothers, as you know, this year is the International Year of the Nurse and the Midwife. This assembly was intended to be a moment of recognition for the incredible contribution that nurses and midwives make every day in every country. The pandemic has robbed us of that opportunity, but it has only served to illustrate why nurses, midwives, and all health workers are so important. Nurses and midwives have been on the front lines of the fight against COVID-19, putting themselves in harm's way. Many have made the ultimate sacrifice in service of humanity. Last month, WHO published the first State of the World's Nursing Report. It shows that the world is facing a shortfall of 6 million nurses to achieve and sustain universal health coverage. But it also provides a roadmap for governments to invest in nursing, to fill that gap and progress towards universal health coverage, health for all. Now, more than ever, the world needs nurses and midwives. Please join me, wherever you are, in standing to show your appreciation for these true health heroes. Thank you. Thank you. We have come together as the nations of the world to confront the defining health crisis of our time. We come in grief for those we have lost. We come with concern for those still fighting for their lives. We come with determination to triumph over this common threat. And we come with hope for the future. The world has confronted several pandemics before. This is the first caused by a coronavirus. This is a dangerous enemy with a dangerous combination of features. This virus is efficient, fast, and fatal. It can operate in the dark, spread silently if we are not paying attention, then suddenly explodes if we are not ready, and moves like a bushfire. We have seen the same pattern repeated in cities and countries the world over. We must treat this virus with the respect and attention it deserves. More than 4.5 million cases of COVID-19 have now been reported to WHO, and more than 300,000 people have lost their lives. But numbers don't even begin to tell the story of this pandemic. Each loss of life leaves a scar for families, communities, and nations. The health impacts of the pandemic extend far beyond sickness and death caused by the virus itself. The disruption to health systems threatens to unwind decades of progress against maternal and child mortality, HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, non-communicable diseases, mental health, polio, and many other of the most urgent health threats. And yet, this is so much more than a health crisis. Lives and livelihoods have been lost or upended. Hundreds of millions of people have lost their jobs. Fear and uncertainty abound. The global economy is headed for its sharpest contraction since the Great Depression. The pandemic has brought out the best and worst of humanity, fortitude and fear, solidarity and suspicion, rapport and reclamation. This contagion exposes the fault lines, inequalities, injustices, and contradictions of our modern world. It has highlighted our strengths and our vulnerabilities. Science has been hailed and scorned. Nations have come together as never before, and geopolitical divisions have been thrown into sharp relief. We have seen what's possible with cooperation and what risk without it. The pandemic is a reminder of the intimate and delicate relationship between people and planet. Any efforts to make our world safer are doomed to fail unless they address the critical interface between people and pathogens and the existential threat of climate change that's making our Earth less habitable. For all the economic, military, and technological might of nations, we have been humbled by this very small microbe. If this virus is teaching us anything, it's humility. Time for humility. 6 months ago, it would have been inconceivable to most that the world's biggest cities would fall early quiet, that shops, restaurants, schools, and workplaces would be closed, that global travel would grind to a standstill, that simply shaking hands could be life-threatening. Terms once used only by epidemiologists like reproduction number, physical distancing, and contact tracing have become common parlance. In less than 5 months, the pandemic has encircled the globe. All countries have faced challenges in coming to grips with this virus, rich and poor, large and small. Low-income countries, small island developing states, and those suffering from violence and conflict are trying to confront this threat in the most challenging of circumstances. How do you practice physical distancing when you live in crowded conditions? How do you stay at home when you have to work to feed your family? How do you practice hand hygiene when you lack clean water? Some countries are succeeding in preventing widespread community transmission. Some have issued stay-at-home orders and imposed severe social restrictions to suppress community transmission. Some are still bracing for the worst, and some are now assessing how to ease the restrictions that have exacted such a heavy social and economic toll. WHO fully understands and supports the desire of countries to get back on their feet and back to work. It's precisely because we want the fastest possible global recovery that we urge countries to proceed with caution. Countries that move too fast without putting in place the public health architecture to detect and suppress transmission run a real risk of handicapping their own recovery. Early serology studies are painting a consistent picture. Even in the worst affected regions, the proportion of the population with the telltale antibodies is no more than 20%, and in most places, less than 10%. In other words, the majority of the world's population remains susceptible to this virus. The risk remains high, and we have a long road to travel. Over the past few months, we have learned an enormous amount about how to prevent infections and save lives. But there is no single action that has made the difference. No testing alone, no contact tracing alone, not isolation, quarantine, hand hygiene, or physical distancing alone. The countries that have done well have done it all. This is the comprehensive approach that WHO has called for consistently. There is no silver bullet. There is no simple solution. There is no panacea. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. It takes hard work, fidelity to science, learning, adapting as you go, and difficult decisions, of course. But there are many common components that must be part of every national strategy. A whole of government and a whole of society response that engages and empowers people and communities to keep themselves and others safe. The commitment and capacity to find, isolate, test, and care for every case and trace and quarantine every contact, and special attention to vulnerable groups like people living in nursing homes, refugee camps, prisons, and detention centers. Since day one, WHO has stood shoulder to shoulder with countries in this darkest of hours. WHO sounded the alarm early, and we sounded it often. We notified countries, issued guidance for health workers within 10 days, and declared global health emergency, our highest level of alert, on the 30th of January. At the time, there were less than 100 cases and no deaths outside China. We have provided technical guidance and strategic advice based on the latest science and experience. We have supported countries to adapt and implement that guidance. We have shipped diagnostics, personal protective equipment, oxygen, and other medical supplies to more than 120 countries. We have trained more than 2.6 million health workers in 23 languages. We have driven research and development through the Solidarity Trial. We have called the equitable access to vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics through the ACT, the ACT Accelerator. We have informed, engaged, and empowered people. We have fought the infodemic, combating myths with reliable information. And we have called consistently for the two essential ingredients for conquering this virus: national unity and global solidarity. We all have lessons to learn from the pandemic. Every country and every organization must examine its response and learn from its experience. WHO is committed to transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. For us, change is a constant. In fact, The existing independent accountability mechanisms are already in operation since the pandemic started. The Independent Oversight Advisory Committee has today published its first report on the pandemic, with several recommendations for both the Secretariat and Member States. In that spirit, we welcome the proposed resolution before this Assembly, which calls for a stepwise process of impartial, independent, and comprehensive evaluation. To be truly comprehensive, such an evaluation must encompass the entirety of the response by all actors in good faith. So, I will initiate an independent evaluation at the earliest appropriate moment to review experience gained and lessons learned, and to make recommendations to improve national and global pandemic preparedness and response. But one thing is abundantly clear: the world must never be the same. We do not need a review to tell us that we must all do everything in our power to ensure this never happens again. Whatever lessons there are to learn from this pandemic, the greatest failing would be to not learn from them and to leave the world in the same vulnerable state it was before. If there is anything positive to come from this pandemic, it must be a safer and more resilient world. This is not a new message. Reviews after SARS, the H1N1 pandemic, and the West African Ebola epidemic highlighted shortcomings in global health security and made numerous recommendations for countries to address those gaps. Some were implemented, others went unheeded. The SARS outbreak gave rise to the revision of the international health regulations in 2005. The H1N1 pandemic saw the creation of the Pandemic Influenza Preparedness Framework, and the Ebola outbreak of 2014 and 15 led to the establishment of the Pandemic Emergency Financing Facility, the WHO Emergencies Program, and the Independent Oversight Advisory Committee. The world doesn't need another plan, another system, another mechanism, another committee, or another organization. It needs to strengthen, implement, and finance the systems and organizations it has, including WHO. Many leaders who have spoken today raised two issues: implementing, supporting WHO, and financing. The world can no longer afford the short-term amnesia that has characterized its response to health security for too long. The time has come to weave together the disparate strands of global health security into an unbreakable chain, a comprehensive framework for epidemic and pandemic preparedness. The world does not lack the tools, the science, or the resources to make it safer from pandemics. What it has lacked is the sustained commitment to use the tools, the science, and the resources it has. That must change, and it must change today. Today, I'm calling on all nations to resolve that they will do everything it takes to ensure that the 2020 coronavirus pandemic is never repeated. I'm calling on all nations to invest in strengthening and implementing the many tools at our disposal, especially the global treaty that underpins global health security, the international health regulations. To be successful, we must all commit to mutual ownership and accountability. One way to do that, proposed by the Africa Group last year, is through a system of universal periodic review, in which countries agree to a regular and transparent review of each nation's preparedness. Since my election at this assembly 3 years ago, I have made a priority of transforming WHO into an organization that's agile and responsive, focused on outcomes and impact. 2 years ago, I presented, and this assembly approved, the cornerstone of our transformation, WHO's 13th General Program of Work. At its heart are the ambitious triple billion targets: 1 billion more people enjoying better health and well-being, 1 billion more people benefiting from universal health coverage, and 1 billion more people better protected from health emergencies. These are the targets that the world has set itself to achieve by 2023 to get on track and stay on track for the Sustainable Development Goals. The WHO results report launched today provides a comprehensive picture of what WHO, its member states and partners have achieved in the past 2 years. On healthy populations, we have made important progress to improve the air people breathe, the food they eat, the water they drink, the roads they use, and the conditions in which they live and work are the most important, actually, in bringing health. On universal health coverage, the world came together last year to endorse the political declaration on UHC, an unprecedented commitment to the ideals of health for all. We have expanded access to prevention, testing, and treatment for HIV, TB, malaria, hepatitis C, hypertension, diabetes, cancer, and more. And to keep the world safe, WHO has investigated, when necessary, responded to more than 900 events in 141 countries. That includes coordinating a huge and complex response to the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, complicated by violence, a mobile population, and a weak health system. All of these efforts have been supported by an increased focus on science, evidence, and data. In the coming year, we will launch the WHO Academy to provide training for millions more health workers around the world. And the WHO Foundation will be launched in the next few weeks to broaden WHO's donor base. I am proud of the progress WHO has made in this and many other areas. However, much work remains to be done. Even before COVID-19, the world was off track for the SDGs. The pandemic threatens to set us back even further. It exploits and exacerbates existing gaps in gender equality, poverty, hunger, and more. Already we have seen the impact of the pandemic on immunization campaigns and many other essential health services. But the challenges we face cannot be an excuse to abandon hope of achieving the triple billion targets or the SDGs. On the contrary, they must serve as motivation to redouble our efforts and to work aggressively in pursuit of the healthier, safer, fairer world we all want. Although COVID-19 is rightly the focus of the world's attention now, we must not lose focus on sustaining and accelerating other initiatives that have saved millions of lives in recent years, like the work of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Over the past 20 years, Gavi has supported countries to vaccinate 760 million children, preventing more than 13 million deaths. Gavi has set an ambitious goal to immunize 300 million more children with 18 vaccines by 2025. We call on the global community to support Gavi's upcoming replenishment, hosted by the United Kingdom, to ensure it is fully funded for this life-saving work. Last week, my friend Dr. Suit from Thailand sent me a message. This is what he said. Actually, COVID has demonstrated how WHO's triple billion goals are interconnected. Universal health coverage plays big roles in the COVID response in many countries, and healthy lives mean less deaths from COVID. I couldn't agree more. COVID-19 is not just a global health emergency. It is a vivid demonstration of the fact that there is no health security without resilient health systems or without addressing the social, economic, commercial, and environmental determinants of health.
仰赖在衣服的柔软里，兰诺衣物柔软芳香豆全新上市，不止柔软，更给你持久香气，一整天都好疗愈。柔软。
Is a necessity. It is a necessity. Health is not a reward for development. It is a prerequisite. Health is not a cost. It's an investment. Health is a pathway to security, prosperity, and peace. My brothers and sisters, 40 years ago, the nations of the world came together under the banner of WHO to rid the world of smallpox. They showed that when solidarity triumphs over ideology, anything is possible. The COVID-19 pandemic is posing a similar threat, not just to human health, but to the human spirit. We have a long road ahead in our struggle against this virus. The pandemic has tested, strengthened, and strained the bonds of fellowship between nations, but it has not broken them. The COVID-19 pandemic is asking us two fundamental questions. What sort of world do we want? And what sort of WHO do we want? The answer to the first question will determine the answer to the second. Now, more than ever, we need a healthier world. Now, more than ever, we need a safer world. Now, more than ever, we need a fairer world. Healthy, safe, and fair. And now, more than ever, we need a stronger WHO. There is no other way forward but together. I thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director General, for your speech. This concludes the high-level welcome. And I now hand over the floor to the 72nd WHA's President. President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam. Excellencies, before I officially open the assembly, I would like to make a few remarks. As the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, Secretary General of UN, His Excellency Mr. Guterres, just said, Now is the time for unity. The COVID-19 pandemic is in all countries. It affects every person in the global community for all aspects of life, regionally, nationally, and globally. Our health, well-being, social life, and economic viability are challenged, even threatened. Our lockdown is necessary to keep COVID under control, but hampers our ability to protect our routine work. Furthermore, we expect economic recovery to take a long time. While we advocate to maintain domestic and international support for health and social programs, and expect to reduce fiscal space for them globally. Because of lower and middle income countries have less reserve, we will bear the weight of slow economic recovery disproportionately. At the same time, we phasing out of various programs that support improving the livelihood and routine services. For example, we are in the transition period for Gavi graduates. Together, these all with our reaching the Sustainable Development Goal and other international targets. Thus, we are requesting flexibility during this transition period. We have heard today from a broad cross-section of leaders in their fight against COVID-19. Evident were the struggles we all face, both domestically and in distribution to address the global pandemic, from France, Germany, and Switzerland in Europe, to the Republic of Korea in our own region, across South Africa, and from a small island state, Barbados. The message from President Xi Jinping has inspired us so much to fight the pandemic. And we are so pleased to learn from the success of the Chinese in handling the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, as well as its active participation and mobilization of global efforts to fight against the novel virus. Furthermore, China has played a significant role in providing the valuable assistance in the medical equipment and expertise to developing countries. They have also supported to the World Health Organization to take charge the global efforts and solidarity that is needed more than ever at this critical time. We highly evaluate the concept of community of health for mankind raised by President. This has demonstrated the true spirit of global partnership for humanity that China has undertaken, and we really appreciate that. Excellencies, Honorable Director General, ladies and gentlemen, with this spirit, I would like now to welcome you to the 73rd World Health Assembly. Let us now turn to election of the President. In accordance with the rules of the rules of procedure, at each regular session, the Assembly shall elect the President and 5 Vice Presidents who shall hold office until their successors are elected. In advance of the Health Assembly, a white paper has been created which contains names of delegates proposed for consideration following consultations within their respective regions as well as their respective countries. To consider the nomination for the office of the President of the 73rd World Health Assembly, I recall that in accordance with the practice of regional rotation, which the Assembly has followed for many years, the President of the 73rd World Health Assembly is chosen among the members of the region of the Americas. I understand that Her Excellency Ms. Ben, permanent representative of Bahamas office, Geneva, is proposed for office of President of the Third World Health Assembly. Is this proposal acceptable? In the absence of any, and as it appears that there are no other proposals, I suggest, in accordance with the rule of the rules of procedure, that the Assembly approve the nomination and election of President by Ambassador Ben, by elected President of the 73rd Assembly. Congratulations, Ben. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Ambassadors, Delegates, Director General, I would like to thank this august Assembly for their trust in electing me as the President of the 73rd World Health Assembly. I would like to express my appreciation to my predecessor, Dr. Bonkong Sahavong, Minister of Health, Lao People's Democratic Republic, for his contribution to the last World Health Assembly. We shall now turn to the nomination for the offices of Vice Presidents of the Health Assembly. I would like to recall that since a delegate from a member of the region of the Americas has filled the post of president, it would be equitable to choose the vice presidents from among delegates coming from the other 5 WHO regions. In this regard, the following proposals have been received. His Excellency Mr. Li Song, People's Republic of China. Mrs. Jacqueline Lydia Mukulu, Congo. Mr. Roberto Shivata, San Marino. Dr. Akimram Elton, Sudan. Dr. Varaz Tencharo Onsa Tiem, Thailand. Before I put the proposal to decision, may I make the following request? A few delegations have raised their hands before the meeting began. Please, may I ask those delegations to lower their hands now. If a delegation wishes to request the floor, it needs to raise its hand. So, of course, it is important that everyone start with hands down. This will enable us to proceed in an orderly fashion. So, I have just read the names of the 5 proposals for vice presidents. Are these proposals acceptable to the Assembly? I understand that the United Arab Emirates has raised their hand. I understand that their hand has been lowered. This is new for all of us, so please bear with us all. We're going to get through it. Patience, everyone. In the absence of any objections, I take it that it is the wish of the Health Assembly to elect by acclamation the 5 delegates I mentioned previously for the post of Vice Presidents of the 73rd World Health Assembly. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Vice Presidents on their election. I shall now determine by lot of order in which the Vice President shall be requested to serve should the President be unable to act in between sessions. The names of the 5 Vice Presidents who I referred to earlier have been written down on 5 separate paper slips, which I'm going to draw by lot. Mrs. Jacqueline Mr. Roberto Shabata San Marino. Vice Presidents, please bear with me should I not be pronouncing your names correctly. I'm trying here. Dr. Viraj Tencharadan Ansantiam, Thailand. I'm getting there. His Excellency Mr. Li Song, People's Republic of China. Dr. Akram El-Tong, Sudan. Now, it is my pleasure to deliver the presidential address. Your Excellency President Dr. Bonkong Siatavang, Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Honorable Ministers and Heads of Delegation, ladies and gentlemen. I join the Assembly in congratulating Dr. Sihathavong, Minister of Health of the Laos People's Democratic Republic, for the poise, eloquence, and order he brought to the chair of the President during the 72nd World Health Assembly. In these uncertain and challenging times facing the global community, the resolute and inspiring leadership of the Director General remains certain, and we commend you and this organization, Dr. Tedros, which requires the global mantle for a healthier, safe, and fairer world. This presidency has great meaning for the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and indeed the Caribbean community and diaspora. I would like to take this opportunity to personally thank the government and people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for the confidence they have shown in selecting me to serve in this post at such an historic time. It is indeed an honor and privilege. We convened the 73rd Assembly during an unprecedented time in history when the global community is faced with negative health, social, and economic effects of the spread of the coronavirus. And the Assembly convened virtually, bringing together participants from across the globe. The public health community has faced challenges in the past. Global health issues transcend national boundaries and governments and call for action on the part of the global forces that determine the health of people. However, at no time in our recent memories has there been such a global impact of a disease, placing the lives, livelihood, and learning of so many in peril, disrupting supply chains, and bringing economies to a grinding halt. Statistically, in terms of numbers, the burden of COVID-19 has risen to over 4 million confirmed cases and close to 300,000 deaths in all 6 regions of the World Health Organization. In the wake of COVID-19, we have witnessed stock markets tumbling, unemployment rising in historic highs, conditions in fragile settings exacerbated, and peace and social cohesion threatened. Over the centuries, global action has yielded countless successes for global health, improving not only longevity, but also the quality of life. Ancient Babylonian civilization heralded the sewage systems designed to protect water supply from contamination and disease. The discovery of pasteurization in the 1860s was a turning point in securing the safety of food supplies. The post-World War II era gave the global health community the tuberculosis vaccine. The past 25 years have witnessed a particularly golden era of unprecedented health achievements. child mortality cut by 47%, maternal mortality reduced by 45%, and reversals in the spread of HIV and AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. This era of COVID-19 ushers in new technology. It requires new knowledge, new innovations, flexibility, meaningful, respectful country interactions, as well as new and greater global partnerships. The role of the World Health Organization in this time of crisis reminds us that we live in an interdependent and interconnected world, where health and well-being are shaped by circumstances, decisions, and events occurring in distant places. Bacterial and viral threats travel almost as quickly and unencumbered as email messages, Twitter, and money flows. The World Health Organization must be steadfast in guiding the response to COVID-19, and at the same time, exact a balance with its mandate to meet the challenges that threaten the survival of many people, including those with chronic non-communicable diseases. The mere nature of our explorative spirit and our humanity suggests we will overcome these challenges. We will find solutions to these current realities that confront us now and in the aftermath of COVID-19. We will embrace new lifestyles that promote good health. We will repurpose and maximize our resources. We will establish a new balance between the economic, the physical, and the psychological welfare of our citizens. While we have lost a generation of elder citizens and those with comorbidities due to COVID-19, we must be resolute to preserve those who are with us. Juggling the health welfare with the social and economic pressures confronting us signals the complexity of the moment. But we are up to the task. Successfully negotiating COVID-19 and the post-COVID era requires that we shift, we recalibrate, and make key investments. It requires that we invest more in new technologies which are accessible to the majority of the people, that we take measures to protect the most vulnerable during the epidemic, and that we address the economic aftermath of worsening inequities. The Assembly would recall that in September 2020, Hurricane Dorian, a Category 5 climatic event, mercilessly brought mass devastation on the islands of Abaco and Grand Bahama, two of the more northern islands in our archipelagic chain. For us, Dorian amassed 74 official deaths, but it displaced thousands and exacted an economic toll of $3.4 billion in damages and losses. The Bahamas has yet to recover from Dorian and does not have the luxury of dismissing COVID-19. The Bahamas must delicately strategize to mitigate the human, social, environmental, and financial fallout of Dorian and COVID-19. This is no small task, but we will not be daunted. We will rebuild strong. Our resilience continues to propel us to new strengths. Despite the financial challenges, the Bahamas, as evidenced by its modeling approaches, has demonstrated the positive impact of public health measures for COVID-19. To date, the Bahamas has confirmed 96 cases of COVID-19 and 11 deaths. The number of recovered cases are at 43. There are 7 hospitalized cases. 1,814 tests have been completed. I salute the millions of healthcare workers who valiantly stood in the gap as we fought the spread of the virus and its impact on the global community. Some lost their lives. Others endured substantial emotional and mental strains. But all continue to give their best for mankind. In conclusion, the bedrock of public health remains constant. Equity, quality, whole of society approach, collaboration, and solidarity across boundaries and borders. As we deliberate over the next 2 days, I trust we will manage our time effectively and efficiently and remain resolute in our determination to aim for the greater good, the common good, the public good. Thank you. The Assembly will now consider the special procedures to regulate the conduct of the virtual de minimis meetings of the World Health Assembly, which are contained in Annex 1 of document A73/33. As we all know, the document before us today has been the subject of extensive informal consultations involving all members. May I take it that the Health Assembly is content to adopt the special procedures contained in Annex 1 of document A73/33 and to apply them to this meeting? Should any delegation wish to take the floor on this particular matter, could you please indicate now by raising your hand? I see no objection. It is so decided. I'd like to thank you for your cooperation. Now, Turning to the matter of credentials, and in line with the special procedures just adopted, I would like to invite Her Excellency, Ms. Socorro Flores Lira, Permanent Representative of Mexico to the United Nations Office in Geneva, to present the report. Her Excellency, I give you the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much indeed,
En mi carácter
Madam
de primera vicepresidenta de la 72ª Asamblea Mundial de la Salud, me reuní con el presidente y con otros dos vicepresidentes de la 72 Asamblea el domingo 17 de mayo de 2020 a fin de examinar las credenciales presentadas por los Estados miembros para participar en la 73 Asamblea Mundial de la Salud. Me complace informar a la Asamblea
It's my pleasure to report to the Assembly that 180 member states have submitted credentials which were found to be consistent with the rules of procedure of the Assembly. I would therefore recommend to the Assembly that the said 180 member states mentioned be accepted as having submitted credentials in conformity with the rules of procedure. In addition to this oral report, I've been informed that since yesterday's meeting with the officers of the 72nd session, another 6 member states have submitted credentials. It hasn't been feasible to meet again with the officers of the 72nd session, but according to previous practice followed during regular sessions, the President of the 72nd session has examined the credentials of these 6 member states and has found them to be in keeping with the Assembly's rules of procedure. I would therefore recommend to the Assembly that the said 6 member states should also be accepted as having submitted credentials consistent with the rules of procedure. I'd like to mention that over the last few hours, the following member states have submitted credentials that have been considered in conformity with the rules of procedures. Comoros, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Gambia. I therefore recommend that the Comoros, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Gambia should also be accepted as having submitted credentials in line with the rules of procedure of the World Health Assembly. Finally, President, I'd like to inform the Assembly that the following member states have not submitted credentials and are thus not represented at this Health Assembly: Guinea-Bissau, Niue, Samoa, and South Sudan. And that concludes my report, President. Thank you.
My apologies. Thank you, Her Excellency. May I take it that the Assembly agrees to Her Excellency's report? In this age of technology, I see no objections. It is so decided. The list of member states having submitted valid credentials will shortly be available in the journal. Dear delegates, we now turn to the important matter of our agenda. This is item 1.4. You will see that we have before us 3 documents. They are the Provisional Agenda Document A73/1, the Provisional Agenda Abridged, which is Document A73/1, Add 1, and a proposal for a supplementary agenda item entitled Inviting Taiwan to Participate in the World Health Assembly as an Observer. This is contained in document A73/1, Add 2. Regarding this matter, I would like to propose the following. I would propose that we adopt our agendas, both the abridged and the provisional agenda, on the understanding that we shall consider the request for the supplementary agenda item at the resumed session of the Assembly. Further, consideration of the request